Our speaker today is a lifelong Memphian and a graduate of both Memphis University School and Memphis State University. In his extensive experience, he has managed some of this community's greatest assets, including museums, the Park Commission, and that band of ducks in the lobby of the Peabody Hotel. Will you please help give a warm welcome to our Shelby County historian, Mr. Jimmy Ogle.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Luke. That's going to be a good weekend here, isn't it? And then March is what Women's History Month. You got that symposium coming, March 30th, yeah. We got through that lesson right there real quick. Let's get on down into where we got the books here for our show. Some of the books, and the first one I want to bring out, I found this about a year ago. Woody Savage wrote it, Streetcar Advertising in America. Has anybody seen this book before? Did anybody know who I'm talking about? Would you realize back in the 19-teens, when we were being real creative in Memphis, like the first self-service grocery store, we had a man by the name of Barron Collier. Let's get him here real quick. Everybody heard of Barron Collier? Well, yeah, Bob Bakery has. There we go. That's great, because he's the father of streetcar advertising in America. As a teenager, he started this business in Memphis. And by age 17 and by age 26, he's a millionaire up in New York. And this book is just incredible with the statistics of he had offices in 70 cities. Let's see what some of the numbers I might have on the slide here. The evolution of streetcars in Memphis, that little ad you put in the streetcars. Car circulation, look at this, 40 million daily, 1.2 billion monthly, 15 billion yearly. And those little ads, you see in the streetcars up there. Somebody from Memphis invented all that or got that going, just like Piggly Wiggly or Holiday Inn or FedEx. Barron Collier. That's the biggest unknown I've found in 10 years, I think. And it's a great book. I'm too excited about it, aren't I? A couple of them are funny. That one in the middle, a merchant says, don't advertise because the results of an ad are only temporary. So are those of a bath. You got to make a habit of them to get the permanent results, right? Your handiest guide to folks who sell or service the Yellow Pages, bad stare, look there, fast repair. Just stuff like that. Shinola. Everybody's heard of something else in Shinola before, hadn't you? There's Shinola being advertised right there. Some Dear Ann Landers. Here's a good one. My parents paid for the wedding. Should his pay for the divorce? Wrigley got involved with Wrigley's gum, and their sales just went out of the roof, chewing gum back then. It's just an amazing story. And of course, it's in the library. Streetcar Advertising in America by Woody Savage, who's a local, Woodson Savage. I just like to talk about local folks like that, A couple other books, let's see. A Guide to Historic Downtown Memphis by Bill Patton. Bill came here as an attorney. Got tired of being an attorney in Washington, D.C. About 10 years ago, he came to Memphis and went on about 4 or 5 mile walking tours and lectures and started writing a book. And he wrote the book. I said, that looks like my book, Downtown Tour. Well, he gave me credit for some of the things, but no, he did all the work. And William Patton, he started Backbeat Tours. Anybody been on Backbeat Tours? And they have the ghost tours downtown where you get on the old bus and they have a musician singing to you, going around town singing songs, telling stories, all sorts of. They did the Johnny Cash tour a couple of Sundays ago. Along the Stagecoach Road by Ellen Davies Rogers, that's old Highway 64 from Boss Crump to King Willie. That tells you a lot about the middle of the century. Overton Park, A People's History. I think this was reviewed in the Commercial Appeal just recently. Brooks Lamb is in that. Last Child in the Woods. Well, that's Richard Louv talking about how we've gotten disconnected from the woods and the rural areas. That's a really good book. On This Day in Memphis History by Wayne Dowdy. That has a lot of interesting things. Everybody knows Wayne Dowdy, right? If you don't, go get to know Wayne Dowdy. And all the Paul Kopic books, the various volumes of that. And here's W.T. You can get these books right here. All 6 of them, you can get for a total of $50 at the West Tennessee Historical Society. That's a great stocking stuffer right there, I think. Some of the trails you can drive, Memphis Map for Elvis fans. I got one here somewhere. But you look at some of these maps, the walking tall trails from the state. I could sell these Memphis Map for Elvis fans, can't I? This is some friends of mine from New York City who liked Memphis so much, they actually sponsored some historical markers. But they came up with this map. It's about 150 sites. It's just incredible. It's great quality here. But there's the sites right there, and there's all the It's a great artistic piece. We need to get them in the gift shop here. But they got them at Lansky's downtown and Sun Studio. But a Memphis map for Elvis fans. You just won't believe all the places Elvis hung out at or went to or used to work in a movie theater and things like that. The Great River Road and the Great Birding Trail here in Tennessee, if you want to get out and drive in the country. You got the I'm a Man walk from Clayborn Temple, Beale Street area down to City Hall. The Memphis Heritage Trail from Beale Street to South Main to East Street to Crump. That's brand new this past year. There's Trailblazer signs up. The Mississippi Blues Trail, the Arkansas Delta Byways. You want to go into another state. You want to get into the Civil War. Next Monday's lecture is about the Civil War. And one lecture we left off our calendar was next Thursday, March 7th, is Memories and Historical Markers. So there's Barron Collier again, one more time. Look up Barron Collier and we won't believe what he did, folks. And the origins and oddities of the streets and bridges of Memphis. Let's just go ahead and tell my favorite story right now. Let's get it out of the way. You want to hold this for a minute, Luke, here? I mean, you're not getting it. I'm getting it back. We ain't got no deal yet. They want it. But that did exist, didn't it? I didn't make that up. I couldn't create that. But way back on November the 6th, 1934, Memphis voted to join TVA Power. So why not name a street for that? Basically an alley. It was formerly named Maiden Lane, M-A-I-D-E-N. But it was a pretty big deal because it was during the Depression years. It was a FDR program, WPA program, I believe. It was a TVA program. East Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, back up to West Tennessee to Kentucky, Paducah, the Tennessee Valley. Intended to be a rural power system. Remember old brother, where art thou? It kind of keys in that a little bit. And Memphis was an urban center, a large urban center, didn't really fit the qualifications. So by the 1950s, the Republican administration, Eisenhower wanted to kick us off, and that's when they had the Dixon-Yates Act, or it could be the Yates-Dixon Act. And that's when we built Allen Steam Plant down there. And I got some pictures of the day from MLGNW that shows a half stack, a full stack, a stack and a half, 2 stacks. There's 3 big stacks down there. Aerial views, great pictures. I got to put them up sometime. And that's when we made that plant to pick up our increased demand for utilities as our community grew. We're still the largest customer of TVA at 11%, okay? And now you want to know the rest of the story, right? Well, the reason why I like it so much, it stretches from Beale Street all the way to Shadiac Street and the Pinch. That's 17 blocks long, it's 27 turns. It's the spine of downtown. Because if you're in the middle of downtown, if you can see it, my rules are, if you can see it, you can talk about it. It doesn't have to be right there in front of you. It's 5 blocks away. I see Starrick Building over there, And these signs were originally put up November the 6th, 1934 to commemorate that. And then later on, if you look right now, it's just November the 6th Street. And I think for 10 years, I've been asking somebody to find me another street in America that's named after a month, a day, and a year, $100 reward, and nobody's done it yet. And we've Googled it, and we've had some of these good experts in here that watch every inch we put up on the screen that should be able to find it. So I'm saying it's the only street in America named after a month, a day, and a year. For when we voted to join TVA Power, does that make any sense? I mean, it's not when we landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969, or when we won the Super Bowl or something like that. There's no street with a better, fantastic name. So I've been pounding on Downtown Memphis Commission and City Hall the last year to get 1934 put back on the signs. 12 signs you got to put up in the intersections. The way we spend money at City Hall, I think we can do that. Some engineers got a problem with it right now, but we're going to, hopefully I'll be back. I'll be back on November the 6th, 2019, and we'll do an 1106 tour, and we'll do a 606 tour. We'll do 2 tours, and hopefully we'll have the signs up and dedicate them, and we'll let y'all come along, and we can dedicate a sign at each intersection we go through on the whole tour. It'll take about 3 hours. You can sit down now. So vote for Luke. Here's our sponsors again. Very thankful for our sponsors getting these videos. We're getting good responses from the videos. Willie did 3 real quick. He's kind of slowed down lately, hasn't he? We have to talk to Willie about that, huh? No, Willie's doing good. He's got some good videos. He's doing some good. You've seen this before. Welcome to Memphis. We got homes, we got parks, we got industries, we got schools, we got air. We're telling people we got air. Of course, we got great water. This was a sign that the motorcycle cop stood behind. Got those speeding tickets coming in right across from the bridge. The Shelby County Welcoming Committee is what we called it. Usually they're out on 240 now, aren't they? You know where they sing out about exit 24, so. Memphis is number 6 on the National Register of Historic Places for listings in the country. We'd like to thank all these folks that make this happen, preserving, protecting, defending, standing in front of the bulldozers, etc. We're behind Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Boston, and New Orleans. We got over 11,000 properties listed, 31 neighborhoods. All roads lead to the high bluff. All roads lead to Memphis. Again, we're the highest piece of ground on the Mississippi River. You see how everything kind of comes into this spot right here, then fans back out across that big delta and river. We're the highest piece of ground on the Mississippi River between Cairo and Natchez. And I say miles and miles of linear smiles. But look, this is about 5 years ago when they did a study of all the various miles within the city boundaries, the freeways, the alleys, just a lot of numbers right there of miles within our streets. That's a lot of streets to keep up with. And you know what that is at this time of the year, right? Potholes. Yeah, whoa. You're supposed to go, a lot of potholes, not potholes. Yeah, and don't get potholes confused with manhole covers, okay? I always get blamed for potholes. I don't know why. Infrastructure Facts, the city is 346.6 square miles. The population is about 684. Maybe it's down to about 634 now. The geographic center of the city of Memphis is Southern and Goodwin, right? Over here on the other side of Memphis Country Club in that area. The geographic center of the county is at Bledsoe Park there in Bartlett, right by the railroad track, okay? So there it is right there, somewhere, yeah, right there. You can already see it on this map. And then Infrastructure Facts, the city has 20,000 intersections, and the county total, it goes up to 36. This is a source from MLG&W from OPD. Signalized intersections are 794, and I understand that's up to $100,000 per intersection to have them signalized. So think when somebody hits a pole or something, or light goes out, what it takes to keep this city signaled up. Highest point in the city, well, you know, as the city grew eastward, it became like High Point was the highest point at the time because it was within the city limits. That's why it got its name. This is out on Malone Road. The folk Follies people have a landfill out there. So it's a landfill. It's the highest point in the city out there on Malone Road. They have the container boxes stored in that area there, and there's a landfill near there. Way out right there. There's Holmes. There's Pleasant Hill. There's right there. It's the highest piece of ground in Shelby County. It's kind of artificial. 18 meets 16th. What I mean by that is the 18th century meets the 16th century there at Gayoso and Hernando. Hernando from 1541 and Gayoso from 1795. There's one intersection where the 18th century meets the 16th century. Is that odd enough? Let's see, DeSoto County. Oh, we said 18 and 16. Well, this is the intersection of 35 and 90 right here on the globe. 35th, is that latitude, right? 90th longitude. That's where it is, right down here in southwest Shelby County. The intersection on the globe of 35 and 90. It's for you astronauts there. Here's the original street plan of Memphis laid out in 1819. Pyramid about right here, St. Jude, Gayoso Bayou, that nasty old Gayoso Bayou. The river, Union Avenue, about 1,309 acres, 362 parcels of land in here during that time when we got laid out. Slow going. Here's a kind of a drawing of all that too. The first bridge across the Gayoso Bayou was 1825, right down in here where Commerce Street comes across, about where the Gold Dome at St. Jude is now. We started building over it after the yellow fever, getting better sanitary conditions. We separated the sewage water from the drinking water in 1880, the model for the industrial sanitary sewer. I started doing box culverts. There's a great book I got right here if you want to look at it afterwards, the 1924 street plan of Memphis that Harlan Bartholomew did. It's just got some incredible pictures. Like if you're at Wendy's there at Washington and Danny Thomas and you look down towards St. Jude, that's Lauderdale Street going right by Pop Tunes. There's a picture here. That was a great big ditch in 1924. They put a box culvert in there and put a street on it. That's one of your ways to get from St. Jude to FedEx Forum if you need to get to it that way underground. And that's how a lot of our streets are. The ditches got covered over. There's old caverns in there that have brick arches that are 20 feet high, 40 feet wide. The stones from the original Washington Avenue Bridge is there. Willie's been there and seen it with me before and got out to live. Now the street names, Poplar's named for the tulip poplar, grows in all 95 states, our state tree. I used to say 91 states, and the fifth grader told me we had 95 states, Mr. Ogle, Mr. Jimmy. So you learn something every day, sir? County, yeah, not states, counties. Yeah, see, I got corrected again. There you go. Going fine. That's my Holocaust right there going at me. And south of Poplar, you got the first 5 presidents, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe in downtown. We also had 4 squares, Court, Market, Exchange, and Auction. So you sprinkle Court in there, south of downtown. Then you get to Union, and there's a little controversy. There's a plaque in the ground on Union there at Maine saying it was contrary to being named for, in 1850 when Memphis merged with South Memphis, the union of the two. That's what it says, rather than the Union occupation in 1862. Well, in 1919, it was named Union by Andrew Jackson. So 1919 comes before 1850 or 1862, right? Okay, right. So it's 1819, Union. Okay. Poplar North is Winchester, Jackson, Overton, our 3 founders that were named there. And then you got Exchange, Market, and Auction, which is now Willis. So if you know your history, you know your way around downtown. If you know the first 5 presidents, the 3 founders, and the 4 squares of Memphis, that's your way downtown. If you're smart enough to know front, main, second, third, fourth, fifth, yeah, fifth, yeah, then sixth. You know your way around downtown. What happened to the bayous? Gayoso Bayou just got box culverts pulled in there, and man just went over. We built over it. You see that a lot where you got Sears Crosstown has the Madison Heights Bayou going underneath it. We just put in box culverts and built over a lot of the bayous and creeks and everything. You see them exposed here and there. Again, there's another look at the plan. There's the Gayoso Bayou twisting all around. It winds all the way down to past the train station. It drains from south to north. Here's that railroad track that goes from Charleston to Memphis, 800 miles back in 1857. The first railroad track to connect Atlantic Ocean with the Mississippi River in the history of our country. That's the railroad track, the Southern Railway that everybody loves right over here. That was a big deal because you're riding a horse and buggy 10 miles an hour. Now you're taking a train about 60 miles an hour to get to the Memphis and Charleston station, which was down there where Danny Thomas is right now. Danny Thomas Street wasn't there at the time. He had the station all in that area just south of Washington over to Madison, taking up all that area. That ravine going underneath there that goes over to Union Avenue by the Commercial Appeal, that was the route coming right in there. And that got torn out, or 1968, I think it was. It was the oldest running active train station in America at the time when it was closed and torn down in the late 60s. And they realigned Danny Thomas in Wellington and Lauderdale. There's some pictures of it right there. Wendy's is about right here, Memphis and Charleston Railway. When we did that, we brought water from the Atlantic Ocean, sprayed it to the Mississippi River, the greatest demonstration of popular joy ever witnessed in the Mississippi Valley. Here's an 1862 map of Memphis. There's the train line right there. Now, Bill says this line right here didn't exist. We can find this train line right in here. West of there. Okay, it's west of there, Willie. Remember that. Is that it right there? Let's get that right. We don't think that one existed. 1870s, you can kind of see the street grids. This is South Memphis, a little bit different grid, and then more different down here by Fort Pickering. And then you go out, you see how the roads came in and came on down to the Pinch area. This is the city back in the first half and 2/3 of the 19th century. Then Greenlaw was kind of the second neighborhood, so there's Auction that is now Willis. Parkway got running like that in the 2000s when St. Jude closed them off. So Greenlaw was kind of your second neighborhood of Memphis going up to Chelsea. Hardly any driveways in Greenlaw to this day. There was no cars at the time, you see. The military road over to Little Rock, crossed at Hopefield up there about where the I-40 bridge goes across now, and goes up to Marion and around. West Memphis didn't really come in until about the 1920s, way down here. Here's Front Street, the turn of the century. It was the front street to the riverfront. The high bluffs, the cotton, no Riverside Drive, no railroad. Here's Union Avenue looking down. This is the oldest building in here. How many of these buildings you work in, Bob? You know all those guys, don't you? The Memphis Convention and Visitors Bureau building would be the oldest commercial building left in Memphis right now from 1848. It was a hospital during the Civil War. There's another street grid, the naval engagement. You see the railroad came into there. The railroad had to ferry across to get to there. Fort Pickering, from basically where the Metal Museum is down to Vance, about 2 miles long along the riverfront. Here's the post office up on Adams and actually on Jefferson and Second, not the one on Front Street. This was during the Civil War. 1888, you can see the street grids, how they kind of, this was Chickasaw, then Front, then Shelby. So they had to clean that up a little bit and get not have 3 names in 15 blocks of a street. Forrest, the 2R Forrest, that's General Forrest there. There's General Washburn escaping from Oddities Park. He got a raid. He jumped out in his nightshirt and ran on up. You got that General Washburn's escape alley right by the rendezvous, He later on became governor of Wisconsin. He named General Mills because he was a general, by the way. You're Cadwallader C. Washburn. Got chased up that alley by far. So you got General Washburn's escape alley. This sign is missing right there at Front Street. If you can do that, you can do 1934 on November the 6th Street, can't you? If you can do Charlie Berger's Rendezvous Alley, I'm stating my case, aren't I? Here's the Fort Pickering area. That's south of, say, Crump. And, of course, they had a lot of names of states in there and some other duplicate names. Metal Museum would be in this area right here. The bridges would be coming in that area. Am I doing this thing too fast? I'm kind of crazy with it, aren't I? Here's the Union occupation during that time. Union in Manassas. Union was not named for the Civil War, but there's a name there. And, of course, Manassas was named the first Confederate victory at Bull Run, right? That's what it was. Our first black high school, too. Let's see. Our population, as we grew up to 1899, that's when we annexed out here, going to the east from downtown in the medical center, basically to where Overton Park is now, and started our east-west grid in Memphis based on automobiles and railroads as opposed to just steamboats. In 1880, we laid out our street sewer system here. George Waring came to town. He's the same guy that cleared the areas up in Manhattan for Central Park about 30 years before that time. So that's a pretty good pedigree right there. We had 8 railroad depots in downtown Memphis. Here's 5 of them right here. That's where the Memphis and Charleston was. So this is where it comes across Union Avenue, goes underneath Madison and Monroe, and came there's Danny Thomas to be. Wendy's to be right in there. It had a spur line down to the docks right here across the river. This is where the Matta transfer station is. That's the L&N Railroad. It went out by Sears. Here's a substation for the Memphis and Charleston. Here is the Chesapeake Southern and Chesapeake, Ohio, and Southeastern. That's where Waterford Plaza is now. That was there up to the middle of the 20th century. So here's some of the railroads out coming into Shelby County and the roads at that time. Railroads were big. Here's our annexations. Again, you see we quadrupled the size of our city right there in 1889, going east-west, and then gradual annexations all around. Binghamton, President's Island, up till the 1950s was Old East Memphis out to White Station. Goodlet, all these areas in 1929 out to Goodlet. Memphis State finally got annexed then. You see in the 60s, places like Oak Haven. So annexations really created a lot of expense for the taxpayers of the city, the street miles, the utility miles and all that. 1888 again, there's the depots. The growth by decade, again, shows you how we were exploding in the first part of the century, and our automobiles were exploding too. Got over 1900 got over 100,000, the greatest day in Memphis history. So here's our automobile population. 1904, 8 miles an hour was the speed limit. 8 cars. You see how it just mushroomed up, and then after post-World War II, it's over 150,000. There's one of our first, that's Samuel Carnes, one of our first car operators. He's the first guy to get a speeding ticket, the first guy to get a hit and run, is what they say. He's made the first telephone call too, I think. About 1905, this is out in Overton Park. At least he's not on the greensward, yet. First funeral in Memphis, most motorized funeral in Memphis, out to Elmwood. It was out to Elmwood, I think. A little flooding in some of the downtown streets. This would be the pinch area before we had the flood controls like the flood walls and everything. It's low-lying land down there where St. Jude is, so it's protected to an extent. This is a funny one here. Children will have to stop skating here tomorrow because traffic will be flowing. This was an underpass that was built. I don't know how you build an underpass. It seems like you build an overpass, right? Because underpass is the big hole right there. But there used to be a centerpiece right here that would be very dangerous. Now, it was standing still by itself, not jumping out in front of cars, but it was very dangerous, and they got that cleared out. That was a big deal in 1938. The underpass was built by Ben M. Hogan. Everybody heard of Ben Hogan? Not that Ben Hogan. We'll come back to him in a minute. Concrete man. By the President's Grade Crossing Elimination Fund. You think of when we're building cars and trains, they're all in the same grade, and there's a lot of traffic jams around. Look at this method right here. Do you think that would work in Memphis? If something popped up, how many cars would run right into that? Or come around this way and shoot over that? To save the life of our fellow man. Grade Crossing Guard Corporation. They're not in business anymore, I don't think. Look at that.
Those things are all over Russia.
Being all over Russia. Street limits in the 20s. The speed limit was 20 miles an hour. City not ticketing for over 30. Arrested for going over 25 sometimes. Memphis had the third highest automobile death rate in the USA. Imagine that. Union Avenue became the first arterial highway, really going from, like Madison gets stopped, Monroe gets stopped out there, you know, about the expressway and all that. It went all the way out. And you can see what happened to Union becoming an arterial highway. A lot of old homes got torn down and things got built. Downtown in June of 1924, at every corner there was a noise riot in progress, a clanging, yelling, screaming, whistling, honking commotion. It seemed to be the custom of drivers to try to toot their way through traffic. By Robert Lanier, that's a great book. There's President Taft coming to christen the YMCA in 1909. We paved Madison down to there to make it look like we were, a large urban city, paved streets. The Broadway of America came in 1927. That's from San Diego to New York City, one of the first paved sign highways. This is teaching my grandparents how to drive across the country. There's a sign that says 70. Trust us, in about 50 more miles there'll be another sign that says 70. Trust us, in about 50 more miles there'll be another sign that says 70. In 2 days you'll be in San Diego. And somebody had to believe that. And now you got maps and GPS and everything, and cars that drive themselves, right? Belvedere Boulevard, I just love this promotional picture here. When it snows, I always go to Belvedere between Union and Central just because of the way the yards are and the trees in the medium. It's just a dusting of snow. Go to Overton Park, too. It's a great place to go. Some of the subdivisions, this was out there at High Point Terrace, get named for the children, some of the streets. John Wood, Charles Wood, Ken Wood, Phil Wood, etc. The subdivision gets to name the streets sometimes, the developer. Now, Philwood is named for a girl, Phyllis, not a boy, Phil, by the way. And it's misspelled at High Point Terrace in Philwood. It's got 2 L's in it. Here's Mr. Officials dedicating Crump Boulevard in 1950. Used to be Iowa Avenue. Here's some newspaper story about the bulls and drivers grumble. That hadn't changed, has it? And then some of the planning about the street grids. We don't have any really good straight north-south through Memphis at all. When you come up 3rd Street, you got to zigzag over to Thomas and all that. And particularly when you got in East Memphis, nothing's ever straight out there. Here's another a map about the area and tried to get the expressway in here. See a partial expressway through here to the airport at first, and then they later finished the northern section. Of course, you had the controversy about the I-40 too. This is West Memphis. Right here. This is where Walmart is now. This is in the 1960s, folks. You see what's been built all through here? Since here's I-40, and I-55 coming in right there. Look how that was 60 years ago. Another map here, the Memphis Expressway System. That's an early map right there. 1953 plan. Again, this is in the clippings file there at the Memphis and Shelby County room. Of course, we changed the way the world traveled in 1952. We opened the first overnight roadside lodging chain out on Summer Avenue. Holiday Inn, Kemmons Wilson. Very first one. The restaurant was called the first one, too. There's Mendenhall right there. Kemmons Wilson had gone to Washington, D.C. with his family in 1951, didn't like the roadside accommodations he was getting, so he was a home builder. He came back and drew up a perfect room for a family of 4. When you work for Kemmons Wilson, he's a great guy to work for. You only work for half the day. Either the first 12 hours or the second 12 hours. And his draftsman was working at home and watching TV, watching Holiday Inn. And he took that as a working title and pencil and put it on the drawings that night. And no money ever changed hands for the naming rights of Holiday Inn. And he built this so that, and Wallace Johnson got involved with him, don't leave him out. The National Home Builders Association was meeting in Memphis. He was the president at the time. And they took it to them to franchise this, saying, if you can build a home, you can build a 120-room hotel. That's how simple they made it. And that's how it got out there real quick. And you remember in the 50s and 60s and 70s, seeing that big, great sign right there, you knew exactly. Every room smelled the same. The ice machine was down there. I mean, the little swimming pool, wherever it was located, everything was just the same in every city. And that's how they franchised that out. Incredible. That's some autograph of the sign. Go down to the Holiday Inn down here on Central and go up on the 2nd floor to the gallery up there, the Kemmons Wilson Gallery, the history of Kemmons Wilson Holiday Inn. It's a fascinating free gallery to go to. second Memphian ever on the cover of Time magazine, the first being Boss Crump, the third being Aretha Franklin. Nobody else. So our streets, the avenues run east-west, the streets run north-south. Even numbers are on the east and north side of the street. Odd numbers are on the west and south side of the street. North Parkway runs east-west. East Parkway runs north-south. You park in a driveway, you drive on the parkway. Street signs are green, blue, black, and the black and gold. We'll get to those in a minute. More streets, Getwell, Shotwell, and Dunn. Of course, that's how it was named Shotwell. Nowhere else but in Memphis would you build a veterans hospital on the street named Shotwell near the intersection of Dunn. That's how it got changed to Getwell. Shotwell was a landowner during that time. There's still a Shotwell between Park and Southern. We got some name for presidents: Polk, Van Buren, Jackson, Franklin, Delano, Roosevelt. That's up in Fraser, by the way. Poplar was going to be changed to Woodrow Wilson once upon a time. It never happened. Chelsea was going to be changed to Isaac Hayes. There's just too many addresses. Right now they're talking about changing Main Street to Main Street. Shelby Drive around Shelby County. There's a lot of Shelby Drives, even up in Bartlett, even up in Millington, all around Shelby Drive. And my much maligned Monroe. Poor old Monroe starts here, right there at the riverfront, comes up to 3rd Street or B.B. King, and gets stopped by AutoZone Park, picks back up again at 4th, gets stops right here by the Expressway. You see, it stops at Forest Park, whoops, Health Sciences Park, it stops in the medical center there. Start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. Here we are all the way past, almost Parkways right here. Still picks up again on the east side of Parkway. So we got one more thing: consistency of names for urban streets and evaluation and design. That was called the Confused Study about Memphis streets. And that was actually what they called it, the Confused Study. I didn't make that up. And this is some reasons why you can see why. When all else fails, mingle. Did you ever get in a wreck because you mingled? Did you get a traffic ticket because you mingled in your car? Mingle. One way, except bikes. This is more about them bikes, man, I tell you. Those bikes only know one way, their way. Ouch. What does that mean? A truck shouldn't go over, right? I kind of figured that out. Thank you very much. Here you go. Say, all right, how about U-turn permitted, no trucks? Huh? Where'd you see that one? 3 feet. This is out in Collierville here. And the Memphis Thunder Racing put these up. That's probably a pretty good sign right there to keep your distance, those bikers, poor guys. Caution, heliport crossing. When's the last time you saw a heliport go across the street? Nobody? Really? Well, that's the St. Francis Hospital. That's where I guess they take the ambulance, though, or get from the helipad landing. And no right turn from your shoulder. Don't ever turn from your shoulder, okay? Here's a good one. At Breedlove, these are red stop signs, by the way. But if you're going to stop right here, 57 feet down, right there, you're going to be stopped in the middle of an intersection right there. You see, right there at Chelsea and Breedlove. That's one of my favorite places, New Chicago. Warning, entering a free speech zone. This is some of those, when you get those protests and counter-protesters, you get all sorts of restrictions of what you can and cannot do. I just like signs. Here's no U-turn from your shoulder again. Thou shalt not park here. Obviously, that's at a church somewhere in Whitehaven. Now, this is a great one. Now, the road may flood. This is Donelson Parkway out there. The road may flood. Now, if you're going to be right here, aren't you happy to know that you might be in 3 feet of water when you're driving right here? Rather than 2 feet or 1 feet. See what I mean? That's on the road telling you you're in a flood. Here's where you drop off your shoulder. Woodstock and Cuba. I'm back on those shoulders again. Shoulder drop off. You ought to see the shoulder drop off right there. Oh my goodness. Of course, at Kirby Pines, I go out there and talk, and I go from the Peabody Hotel, and I get out there and I get caution, duck crossing. Can't get rid of those ducks. Can't get away from them. Good and Southern Railroad now. There's a railroad track. No train horn. And I guess the neighborhood lobbied that real good because they're supposed to buzz that horn or toot that horn all the time. But there's one I've never seen before except they're Goodlet, right to railroad tracks. Okay, this is one of the best stories I found recently. One street, 2 parades, same day, same time. Main Street played a double feature yesterday simultaneously. The Fire Prevention Week parade got half of the building and all the southbound lanes. Imagine 2 parades on Main Street at the same time. About 1,000 marchers representing striking city hospital employees got the northbound lanes. The double feature began at 11:45 at Main and Monroe when the marchers and the paraders met. From then on, a spectator would have to stand on both sides of the street at the same time to catch both shows. Only in the movies and in Memphis. For 25 minutes, the marchers and paraders passed each other. The marchers chanted and sang freedom songs. Pretty paraders like Miss Little Fire Prevention, Beverly Hills, 1968, waved to the marchers, and they waved back. There were no incidents. Double marches going in different directions at the same time in downtown Memphis. Have you ever heard of that? Alleys in downtown Memphis, great name, Stereo Alley. I'll show you that in a minute. Shore Alley, the Shore family there at the Tennessee Brewery. That's now Minna Street or Minna Street. Maggie Isbell Alley runs from Monroe up to the courthouse. She was a seamstress who in that area for about 50 years, so they named the alley for her. Maggie Isbell Alley south of Monroe to Union is Charlie Vergus Rendezvous Alley. Barbaro Alley is there from 2nd Street down to Front Street, just south of Union Avenue, parallel to that. It's also known as Dead Man's Alley, right there, because they had some funeral homes in that alley. Whiskey Chute was Park Lane. Whiskey Chute was Park Lane, right there. It goes by the Falls Building from front down to Main. Jack Tucker Alley, right there at front down to Wagner, right behind the Front Street Deli, let's say. It's the only alley I know of in a quarter block. Most of them in the half block, of course, November to 6th Street, Park Lane. Toncrae's Alley is right there across from the Pyramid where the parking lots are, right by Erickson Group. Here's Stereo Alley. Back in the 1960s, KLIX was a radio station. And they were beautifying our alleys by trying to get the dumpsters out there and cleaning up and all this stuff. And they weren't making any trash, so they put speakers out in their alley to beautify the alley that way, you see, by nice music. Now, I think we ought to do that now. The way we got technology now and Wi-Fi, there ought to be about 5 little zones downtown where we have speakers up so they can't get stolen, kind of high, controlled by Wi-Fi, and have Memphis music playing in various spots, softly at certain times. I mean, you go to Ripley or Covington, they got these big old speakers out in the courthouse blasting a local radio station or whatever. But Stereo Alley is a good take right there, I think. November the 6th, there you go. Maggie Isbell. Sidewalks, man, we have a whole lot of sidewalk treatments. The Beale Street Bass Notes, there's about 180. The Orpheum Walk of Stars is about 85 now. The Peabody Duck Walk of Fame is 26 now. Downtown Memphis Commission has sidewalk stories. Peabody Place has some stories around it. The Days Inn at Graceland. I know y'all been to the Days Inn at Graceland. There's your staycation right there, Days Inn Graceland. And then the 0 mile marker. And here's the next set of markers that are getting ready to be put in the ground. There's Jimmy Ogle right there. Yay! And then, thank you. The way they do that, they just don't go up there and tear up the concrete and put a brass note in there. They get about 4 or 5 together, get the concrete man out there at one time, and pour it. So it makes it better on the concrete pour, and you can't do it right in the middle of the winter time either. So these are the ones that are waiting up there in the office to get done. So they're the brass notes. And not just musicians, it's civil rights leaders, photographers, business leaders, anybody who led to the heritage of Beale Street, even people that talk about it, you know. The stars, over 85 stars, the people who performed in either the Grand Opera House or the Orpheum Theater over the years, Marcel Marceau, Garrison Keillor, Yul Brynner, Duke Ellington, even Helen Keller's got a star. Go figure on that. Kevin Kane's got some duck feet there. These are the Peabody's or Belts Corporation, let's say, who led to the rebirth of downtown, people they want to honor, whether it's Chamber of Commerce people, mayors, Mr. Lansky, 5 Belts people, Henry Turley. Lynn Sittler was the latest inductee with all her work with the Memphis Film Commission. Pat Tygart, the party planner, you know. So if you got 26 of those around 2nd, Union, and B.B. King. Jason D. Williams. There are 50 of these sidewalk story plaques down. Well, not 50 anymore. There's about 21 missing from Madison Avenue. I can't figure that out at all. You can't even tell where they were. There's a real mystery. Like the aliens came in and stole all the sidewalk plaques off of Madison Avenue. I'm saying that publicly, aren't I? Uh-oh. But they tell you a little walking history about downtown, and they're placed Union Avenue, Monroe Avenue, Court Avenue, around Court Square, a couple of alleys. My favorite one is Heroic Hooker. Y'all right there at November to 6th Street and Gayoso. Annie Cook in the yellow fever epidemic. She ran a house of commercial affection in downtown Memphis. That's what we call them at Elmwood Cemetery. House of commercial affection. It was a brothel. And she let all her employees go so she could take care of yellow fever victims and let her employees go. And she died, being a hero, and some of her employees passed away too. But she's a heroic hooker. There. And these are 6 of these around, like the Goldsmiths one here. It tells you it's the first department store to have air conditioning and have an escalator. It's neat, well-intentioned, but now they're hard to read. There's 6 of them, like Haverty's and Gayoso Hotel all around. Some of the sidewalk stamps. This is an old one from 1941. You know what I'm talking about here, laid by L&W Construction. I got a massive collection of pictures of sidewalk stamps. There's one, Southern Builders, 1952. Here's the oldest one here, Ben Hogan. That's right there at Sun Studio, 1938. It's the oldest one I found. I had to get my muffler fixed at Advance on Summer, walk down to the cottage. There were 17 different sidewalk stamps in a 5-block area. That's how fast the summer was growing in the 1950s out there. Some even have a plaque. This plaque's in the sidewalk there on 2nd Street. That's a metal plaque he was really proud of his sidewalk, wasn't he? Right there at Court. Here's the Days Inn in Graceland. They kind of honor the king there. And going into the Days Inn in Graceland, the king, before Elvis, there was nothing. John Lennon. Y'all trust both those guys, don't you? The 0 mile marker right there at Madison in front, right in front of the law school. From this point, distance from Memphis measures. So if you're coming in from I-40, Sycamore View's 12 more miles, or mile 12, but you're in Memphis, you got to have one central reference point in each city, all directions. Otherwise, you get messed up on your mileage everywhere. So this little cute little this is the milestone right there, placed by the Engineers Club in 1923. Oops. It's about 18 inches tall, 12 inches square. It's 274 feet sea level. It says that on it too, right there on the back of it. And that's what it says right there. It's even patented too. This is a manhole cover. Isn't it beautiful? Wow. Good wow right there, man. Way to go. And there it is, right there. There's 17 of these on Main Street between City Hall and Madison, let's say. 3 different shapes, round, square, rectangular. A round cover cannot fall into a round hole. That's the main reason. We do a demonstration. We don't take one of the 100-pound covers and do the demonstration. You get one of those old water meter covers and demonstrate it. It cannot fall into a round hole. Apparently it's the strongest against weight. So you see the square ones can be turned, or the round, a rectangular can be turned and dropped down into a hole. If you're picking up a 100-pound long manhole cover, 100-pound manhole cover, it's easier to roll it than to carry it, too. There's like 10 different reasons we give. 7 different usages: gas, electric, water, sewer, storm drain, traffic signals, and telephone or communications. There's 14 different generations of electrical manhole covers. If you look at the electrical or the utility tree of Memphis back in the 1880s, you had all these private companies, water, gas, electrical, that got consolidated, and finally by 1939 became Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, the largest multi-purpose 3-utility company under one roof in America. And right there, it's the most photographed building in America too, because it's the backdrop to the Elvis Presley statue on Beale Street, And when you think about your utility bill, light, gas, and water, and there's about 8 items or 7 items that you get billed for, like mosquito, about 20% of your utility bill, they're a collecting service for a lot of other agents, because they're going to every address. So they get, some of the money they take is not for them, but they're collecting it on behalf of the city to go to those organizations because of them hitting every house, It makes sense. So it doesn't mean your water rate's going up all the time or your utilities. Some of those rates might be going up to fight those mosquitoes. There's at least 14 ways to say Memphis in a manhole cover in downtown Memphis, by the shape of the font or whatever, or the thickness of it. I turned this picture into Jody Vance at Downtown Memphis magazine one time, thought it'd be a sure winner for the, if you say 14 ways to say Memphis in a downtown manhole cover. She didn't write me a thank you letter. I didn't get close on that. That's a photography thing. I love Jody. Isn't that pretty? It is to me. That's always a telephone. Chickasaw Iron Works was there, about where I-40 hits St. Jude. So Bolton High School came down with an art class one time. We did a rubbings tour. We rubbed the names off of the fountain there at Hebe Park. They're down in the streets rubbing some of a mixed media exhibit they did. There's a kid's hand right there. There you go. And then they rubbed some of the names off, like somebody's last name they put on their rubbing. How about that? That's pretty good, isn't it? Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. This was over at the building there at 3rd and Madison, now B.B. King. And people are sending me manhole covers from all over the world. I know where Nick Gotten is all the time, because it's coming from California or Texas. One time he was in Copenhagen, and there's a big old cathedral right there, and his wife Pamela was fussing at him because he was out in the street taking a picture of a manhole cover. And there's this big, beautiful cathedral. So if Dick Guyton gets killed in Europe, it's because he's out in the street taking a picture of a manhole cover. He went down for a good cause. Riverside Drive, a couple of real interesting streets we have. Riverside Drive formed in 1935 to link downtown Memphis to the bridges. Now we're trying to quit linking downtown Memphis to the bridges in all sorts of ways, but that was very important at the time with the growth of automobiles. And there's not a good way in the middle of downtown to get anywhere, really. All the streets we've closed. City Beautiful Commission, one of their first projects, that formed in 1930, one of the country's first beautification suburban systems there is. Tomley Park, 8-acre Tomley Park, about where Beale Street Landing is now, was the first park. It was Astor Park, later changed to Tom Lee in 1954. Of course, the festival's down there, the River Buff Walk on the top, and then Beale Street Landing. Of course, we expanded the park. Here's Riverside Drive being built. How about that? And here's it being dedicated. And still had some of the conveyor belts going over it for a while, because this is all industrial up in here. It's now residential. Finally got some trees planted. Beautiful Riverside Drive. We finally got some trees planted. Flood in 1937, just like it was in 2011. That low intersections and below the floodplain. That's where all the national news anchors stood in 2011, said Beale Street was flooded. Will there be a Grizzlies basketball game tonight? Well, yeah, it's 30 feet higher. Get out of here. I ran them off. Now that's a pretty picture right there. Of course, this John B. Edgar Point, this has all been filled in, because when they changed the bridge up there, the channel came straight in now rather than at an angle, and destabilized Riverside Drive. So when we did the project there at Tomley Park in 1991, you had 7 good things happen. You stabilized the channel of the river, you stabilized Riverside Drive, you stabilized the bluff, so you could insure the bluff and finance the bluff and build on the bluff, and you got 20 extra acres of park land. That's a good public project, isn't it? Yeah. Just like that bridge over to Mud Island. Hackett builds Bridge to Nowhere in 1987. 600 acres of vacant land. There's 7,000 people living out there 5 minutes from the core downtown. It's packed. Riverside Drive, there's the old Sears Crosstown way out there. See how big it is? That's 2.5 miles away. You see all the industrial, here's the Chesapeake, Ohio and Southwestern Railroad Station. That's where Waterford Plaza is now. Did I get that name right, Bill? Chesapeake, Ohio and Southwestern? Okay. That's a tough one. And these were the warehouses that were destroyed in that windstorm of 2003, and don't call it by that other name. There never was. I said don't. He had nothing to do with it. We never have a hurricane here. This is where that one Memphis project's going, all in here. But again, this is all residential now. Cotton Row, real quick. Of course, 70% of the nation's cotton was grown within 200 miles of Memphis between 1880 and 1920. The cobblestone wharf, the railroad coming in made everything very accessible. Cotton Carnival and the Cotton Society, Cotton Museum. Let's get going here. This is a plaque on a building there, the Cotton Exchange on the Front Street side by Mr. Britton. About Front Street. We won't read it all. Here's Front Street back in the day. There's Bob Acree right there. It is, isn't it, Bob? World famous Cotton Row. These just a lot of cotton everywhere. The squidges and the snakes, all sorts of terms there. Look how get on the pants, get everywhere. Those poor old guys with cotton. You felt so sorry for how poor they were, Here's looking down from the library south towards the Cotton Exchange building. This would be the Union Planters building. That'd be right around the corner is where Tom Cruise jumped out in the movie The Firm into the cotton truck, Or his stunt double, by the way, not Tom Cruise. We saw a lot of his stunt double during that stuff. Of course, you got the Cotton Exchange building across the street, the Memphis Cold Storage. That's where the butcher shop was. It's being renovated now by Billy Ogle. Cold Storage, the Silver Moon Candy Company, hard candy in there. Some of the old cotton factors, let's say, mainly in the first floor. The second and the third floor is where they go to class the cotton with the skylights, the northern-oriented light for better observing, no fluorescent lights at the time. In the middle floors would be other support industries along there like shipping and supplies, insurance. Some more names right there. How about that for a little? That's cool each year. I don't know when they stopped doing that, but I'd hate to have to put that thing up. A bale of cotton like that weighs 500 pounds, doesn't it? Yeah. Parades. Y'all remember this. Call in tomorrow and tell me about this. Now, the Midway. There you go, Midway. Beale Street. Gosh, we could talk for an hour about Beale Street, can't we? So we're not. But here's some of the names. Robertson Top in the 1840s was South Memphis from 1844 to 1850, and Beale Street was the main street of South Memphis going down to the riverfront. We didn't merge till 1850, so I basically went from Union to the train stations. Beale was apparently, Thomas Beale, a War of 1812 veteran. Nothing to do with music at all. South Memphis merger in 49 that became official on January 1st, 1850. Beale Street Marketplace is where Handy Park was. Handy Park, National Register for Short Places. Dr. King's last march was on it. Tanks on Beale, urban renewal or removal. Grand reopening. Still got my key from that grand reopening there on the street. Still has Handy on it right here. I carry it around for good luck. That's from Handy Park. Crossroads of America's music, that's for sure. A mile of vice and commercial ambition owned by the Jews, policed by the whites, and enjoyed by the Negroes at the turn of the century. That's Lieutenant George W. Lee's phrase. He was the mayor of Beale Street at the time, a black operative of the church family. This would be where Tin Roof is now. This is Rufus Thomas Boulevard. This is Beale looking east. The Blues Trail that came up from Mississippi almost came to Beale Street, but the people did for sure. Highway 61 actually turned at Crump and went to Arkansas on the maps, you know. But here's all the blues musicians that came up. The blues are the roots, the rest are the fruits, the field hollers, the work songs, the spirituals that became the blues, the country, and the gospel. They got into Beale Street where whites and blacks could mingle together and make rock and roll and soul in the 1950s. Changed the culture of the world right there. All from that delta. W.C. Handy wrote Mr. Crump that became Memphis Blues, published in 1912 at the Pace and Handy Music Company. This is Beale Street Blues later on, St. Louis Blues. If Beale Street Could Talk. That was a movie, wasn't it? Somebody won an Academy Award for supporting it. I don't think it had anything to do with Beale Street, though, did it? There it is, 1912, formerly Mr. Crump. Beale Street Marketplace. That's Handy Park now. That was a market. The market was too far away at the time up there at Auditorium area, so they put one down there at Beale Street. Tore that down in 1930 for Handy Park. You see the sign said Beale Avenue right there. Church Auditorium on Beale Street. Again, looking east again. Music everywhere, a lot of fun. This is at 3rd Street or B.B. King looking east. He thought Danny Thomas came to open up a hospital, but he got here. He didn't like the name Beale Avenue, so he petitioned to get it returned to Beale Street. Wrote a song, played it at some of his fundraising concerts, petitioned the city commission, and then he got the mayor to change it back. That's not a real gun, but there's Beale Avenue. This is Mayor Frank Toby. Bring back Beale Street. So the only east-west street in Memphis is Beale Street. The rest are avenues, and the north-south are streets. A lot of parades. Every parade came by and played homage to Mr. Handy when they came by and stopped and danced right there at Handy Park. Of course, you had the marchers and the strikes. We kind of went through this in our civil rights program. That's Clayborn Temple, which is cut off by FedEx Forum. Now that's Hernando that becomes Rufus Thomas Boulevard on the other side. The world's most famous marches occurred right here. The last march for Dr. King. A lot of violence broke out. Tanks on Beale. I always say this kind of looks like Beale Street nowadays, doesn't it, with all the police down there at the intersections. And then we got the urban renewal, and see how became Handy Circle there, and all this happened. This is in the 70s. This is kind of weird. This all got taken back out later on, though. And of course, there's FedEx Forums in here now, and Gibson's here now. There I am, 1983, with hair, and a skinny face, and contacts. Look at some of the buildings then and now. So, again, then and then during the urban renewal years, and then there it is now, Club 152. Here's Schwab's. Schwab's hadn't changed at all. Same crummy floors, same crummy merchandise. If we don't have it, you don't need it. You know. B.B. King's at 126, I think it is. I-40 in Overton Park, very important. After we annexed, we started forming. The Park Commission was formed, and they bought the land for Overton Park in November 13th, and for Riverside Park on November 14th, and then started connecting them with the parkways in between. When we get all those cars coming in, George Kessler, one of the finest landscape architects in the world, came and did all that. It developed up through the early part of the century, and then we got down to where this national system of interstate and defense highways came through, and some of the little old ladies in Midtown and men didn't want it to come through Midtown or Overton Park, and they started tearing up the place. And then the Citizens versus Volpe, or Citizens to Preserve Overton Park versus Volpe Secretary of Transportation, actually got finalized on March 2nd, 1971. It's the first time the little old ladies fought City Hall, Chamber of Commerce, County Hall, state government, federal government, all the way to the Supreme Court. And for the first time in the history of our country, the Supreme Court of the United States decided for the citizens and the environment against the government in our history. It was only going to take 9 acres of Overton Park. Think about that. Or 9%, maybe 25 acres, but 9%. But there's a big, right bisecting. The old bus lane, remember the bus lane? That was a rite of passage for us. If you could drive down the bus lane when you got your driver's license and not get a ticket, that was kind of fun. Things we did. Linda taught me that. So the first time ever that the government sided for the environment and the people against the government. Sit at that park in Memphis right there. Of course, there's the old streetcar line. That would have been the route. See, so, and of course, that was taken out to be the bus lane. The zoo. See, the zoo didn't come in until later on, until like 1906. So there's a lane coming. Used to have the lane coming in from Poplar. This is Kessler's design right here. There's the greensward. There's George Kessler. Born on the same day Ida B. Wells was born. We used to have a Kessler Ida B. Wells day at Overton Park on the golf patio. That's how crazy we are about history. It could have come right around through there. They planned it poorly from Jackson to Memphis to go across here. Why'd it have to come right through the middle of the city? He was proud of it, wasn't he? That's the governor. There's the old bus lane right there. And see, and they tore all that up and put the houses back in, Had the bad geometry there because it was going from 2 lanes to 1 lane. Now it's all 2 lanes or 3 lanes going through there now as an alternate route rather than a main route. So I-40 does connect all the way around there. It goes from Barstow, California to Wilmington, North Carolina, 3,000 miles. 3.5 miles of it didn't connect to Memphis for a long time. There it is. But now they've rerouted the actual number around the north side of the city. Look at these messed up areas in the city. It's kind of the route there. Enough of that, huh? There it goes. The parkways, they are parkland. There's about 200 acres, I believe, when you talk about the 12 miles of parkways, speedway, all from Overton Park all the way around to Riverside Park, now Dr. MLK Park. Starts up there about Danny Thomas on the North Parkway. There's another one of those underpasses they built. You got East Parkway, North Parkway, Tresvant, and Summer. Down here you got East Parkway, South Parkway, Spotswood, and Airways. Isn't that beautiful? We haven't built a better street yet. We had 8 cars at the time. The speed limit was 8 miles an hour. That used to be green. And the bridle path used to go through here from the Overton Park to the fairgrounds on East Parkway there. So, 4 name intersections. I just told you 2 of them. Stage, James, Jackson, and Austin P. Bingestown, Bluff, Lock, and Lock Cube up there at the Shelby Forest General Store. I could get all the signs in this picture. I was real proud of this one. Boom, 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 boom. I got all 4 in one picture. I was standing on a ledge of a building doing it, but that was a real challenge for me. Green are the city signs, blue are the private drives, and the black and gold are the honorary street names. Like this is over on Central and Terra, right over here, private drive. Georgia King is there right across from St. Mary's Church on Poplar. She's an activist being honored. B.B. King Highway, you got some other honorary names. This is unusual at the Carimi house right there at Lauderdale and Pontotoc. The street signs are actually on the house. Same thing down at the D.T. Porter building too. Look at this. Right there at the D.T. Porter building, they have the same type of thing. Why? I don't know. It's only 2 like that I've ever found. 3 on top, stacked 3 high. So these are legit. That's legit. And somebody in the Edge neighborhood named it Bedford Alley and put a sign on top of that on their own. How about I finally collected all the numbers of street signs up to 55. There's 18 right there. You know where that is? It's on the Ole Miss campus. Yep, Ole Miss campus. Archie Manning's number, 18. How about that one? Don't you not want to go over 4.5 miles an hour somewhere? That's over in Arkansas where the train line comes in there at the Engineers Point. Goodness. Blue Star Highway, garden clubs throughout the United States have done these Blue Star Highways. How about a 7-name semicircle? Now, you're going to drive on the same street and never turn and have 7 different names in Memphis, Tennessee. You start at Sharp, you go about 10 blocks, you cross Crump or Lamar Place, then it's Elliston for 10 blocks, then it's New Willow, then Willow, then White Station, then McCrory, then Macon. Here we go. All through here, there's Sharp, Elliston, New Willow, Willow, till you get to where Billy Hardwick's bowling lanes are. You just kind of turn gently, not taking left or right. Don't turn your blinker on any of this. That's my rule. You're going north, up White Station, past Summer, you come to Macon, and then you turn left there, and you veer left, you got McCrory, and Macon again, all the way down to there. 7 different names on the same street. That used to be my old paper route right there, too. Others with multiple names, Hollywood, Alicia, Hollywood Range Line. They wanted to name that part Bear Bryant, but that had been 4 names. They didn't want to do that. Barron Roads, Quince, Tresman, East Parkway Airways did that. Mill, Jackson, Austin P. A.W. Willis, North Parkway Summer. Poppy, Deloach, Innovation, in 4 blocks right over here. Highway 61, Thomas, Danny Thomas. Lauderdale, Willie Mitchell, Lauderdale again. Some street origins, Poplar's the Tulip Poplar. Park is named for Jane, the wife of Michael Diedrich. Let's see. Tresman Center. Oh, this area here, you have Southern, Midland, and Central. And that was Mr. Tresman's property, and Southern was on the Southern Railway. Central was halfway between Poplar and Southern, and Midland was halfway between Central and Southern. It was Midland, or midpoint. Yeah, me too. Brister is named for John Brister, and Miner's named for Seymour Miners, the first 2 presidents of Memphis State, but the buildings on campus are named for their children who died in their 20s. That's kind of a different thing. Eccles is always misspelled, by the way, too. So, Galloway, there's like 4 different Galloways and Lafayette's around here. Samuel Carnes, Prescott. Yeah, 4 Galloways and 6 Lafayette's around here. Ellsworth, interesting. Back in 1929, we had a census. 1930, we miraculously got over the 250,000 mark, which gave us more funding. So they gave Mr. Ellsworth, who took the census, a watch and a parade, and they named Peachtree Street Ellsworth. So it parallels Highland right here between Central and Southern. That's how it got its name. And Deloach was named for Josiah Deloach. That's right over here by the Holiday Inn. He was up there in Collierville during the Civil War, and some Union soldiers came riding by, and they wanted a drink of water. He was a Union sympathizer. He gave them a drink of water and said, "Don't go around that way because there's a rebel ambush." And they avoided the rebel ambush, and it turned out one of those soldiers was a guy named General Grant. You've heard of Grant? When he, yeah, and guy said, Sherman almost got caught in Collierville too, you know, when his train got raided. So when Grant became president, he remembered Josiah Deloach and made him postmaster. Postmaster was always a big position here. And he designed the first 4-cent postage stamp based on that Andrew Jackson bust there at the courthouse. And Ed Williams told me that story, and I believe him. And he used to live on Deloach Street, too. So that's my source on that one. University West, this is the area between the University and Highland. They don't want you to park there at all. You live in the shadow of the campus. You got religious institutions, fraternities, Highland high-rises, old library, used to be YMCA. A lot of people didn't like getting along, I guess, right there. They seemed like they should. Patterson, PAT, stands for parking and towing. And there's every way you cannot park in that area right there. 36 different ways you cannot park in that 6-block area. The Baptists don't want you parking. The Methodists don't want you parking there a lot. You look at those like Baptist Student Union stuff like that. The Catholic don't want you parking there. Barth House, that's Episcopal, I guess. Don't park unless you're Episcopal. Surfaces, look at all the various surfaces we've had over the years. There's still some nice pavers and stones down and cobblestones, still subsurface of a lot of our streets downtown. These curbs are 6 inches by 6 feet by 2 feet down. That's how we did granite curbs before we had poured in place concrete, just like big dominoes. And so when you see a lot of projects downtown, they get historical tax credits for saving those old granite curbs you see in a lot of downtown. Those things weigh about 400 pounds. I tried to pick one up. Old cobbles. Yep, he was proud of it too. Let's see. Hooves and Poffs. This is out there in Germantown. This is on Central right here. Bolton High School's got theirs out there. We talked about Highway 70 connected San Diego to New York City. Drive-in theaters. Anybody remember a drive-in theater besides Summer? Oh, yeah. There you go. We had about 11 of them, I think it was. And the one on Summer now has that yellow Volkswagen twirling around. I don't know why they did that. It's not even a convertible or anything. Whoever went to a drive-in in a Volkswagen? Bunch of car clubs, runners track clubs, bicycle clubs, all sorts of ways to join and fellowship and ride around and go to motorcycle rides out to Shelby Forest General Store and stuff like that. The bridges real quick. We've kind of done this before. We built 5 bridges in Memphis, 4 to Arkansas, 1 to Mud Island. Before that time, we had ferries, 5 cars at a time, take 2 days to get a train across the river. Our ferries. And like I say, this is how the river came in. Oops, it's the next slide. This is how the river came in. But then when we changed it right here for the bridge that went across there in the 1970s, it made that water come straight down and bang up on Riverside Drive. And then, of course, we closed off the east side of President's Island to make Jack Carley Causeway in the 1950s and the industrial port. This is our first bridge. This is how we built a bridge in Memphis. We start at both ends and hope it meets in the middle. 2 months before the bridge opened, right there, would you go on that bridge? I didn't Photoshop this. 1 month before the bridge, would you go on that bridge? It's the longest steel span in the country at the time. And neither would the inspectors, and so they condemned it. They got 18 locomotives, rode them across. They didn't fall down. And in May 12th, 1892, we had about 50,000 people down there. Look at that nice souvenir right there. And that's what opened up Memphis to the West Coast and the Asian market. And then we had all the automobiles come in. I just love these scenes like this from the Arkansas side. Them cows over there. Cows a mile from, back when we had that last flood in 2011, we had some deer come up into downtown Memphis. They got run out of the bottoms. Snakes come up in Overton Park now. Snake lady, she puts the chips in the copperheads and she monitors the snakes. She puts them back in the park and monitors the snakes. It never crossed the parkways. She showed us that grid one time. They ain't going across that parkway. They're going to get hit. All right. Harahan Bridge, 2 railroad lines and the cantilever supports. These are some interesting slides here. As it was built, 1916 and 1917, there's the cantilever supports. We took those cross ties off or cross slats off. That lasted until 1949. Then we had so many automobiles, we needed a more modern bridge. Oops, had a little problem there. So when you're on the boat ride next week, $10 for the boat ride, either Tuesday or Thursday. Get there by 2 o'clock, get the Jimmy Ogle special. 90-minute sightseeing cruise. We'll go right underneath there with these bridges. Great photo opportunities. Harahan Bridge, he got killed in a railroad crash in 1911, but he envisioned this. He worked for the railroad. That's who he named it for. He's buried in Memphis, Tennessee at Forest Hill Cemetery. There's the 2 lines. There's the cantilever support. Kind of tight squeeze there. There's 2 bridges. Look at the floodplain over there. It's about 10 feet deep over there now. I'm changing the sign from 39 to 40 tomorrow sometime. The first time I get to go to 40 in my life. Big things in my life nowadays, Great. See how the river came around? There's Mud Island. They had to make that big turn to get through these bridges too, because this current wants to take you right into here. You really got to come out of there hard right. Oh, there it is again. Before we had the expressways and everything. Had a little fire in 1928. There's the Metal Museum, Crump Park. See, there was residences in there and everything all around. River, rails, roadways, runways. We were already touting at the time. We weren't talking about the airport yet, but we certainly were touting our port here. Look at all these train lines. This is South Bluffs right now. That's all residential, okay? And this would be like the Union Station and Central Station. No, Union Station right here, Central Station right here. Look how many train lines are in there. And down here where Church on the River is in Channel 3, all the switching yards there. Big River Crossing now, what a wonderful thing that is. Of course, that other side's closed right now, it's underwater. You can walk across the river, but you can't go down on the land. You can stay above the river and come back. 2 states, 2 counties, 2 cities, railroad, federal government, a lot of folks involved. It's going to connect all the way around Wolf River. Conservancy is bringing your walkway all the way around to 13 more miles down to Shelby Farms. We've already dedicated 3 legs of that. Big Mighty Lights. Here's the fireworks show when it opened in 2016. Now you got Mighty Lights. This is a view. Isn't this a great view, looking back at the city skyline from there? You're about 60 feet above the water, right on top of these barge tows. Yeah, they're smiling. Beautiful sunsets, fireworks. This is the only way to Arkansas from 1916 to 1930. That's kind of scary, isn't it? Did the Bristol Highway, the first state road. Let's see. That's when you get down into Arkansas. They've cleared all that out now, but when it was unused, it got kind of weedy over there. They've cleared all that out, and that's become a part of the big river crossing now. And then we had the third bridge come in 1949, which is the Memphis and Arkansas Bridge. It's the old bridge of the I-55 bridge. Here's some of their construction. President's Island being built. You see right there, Jack Carley Causeway coming across. And that's the Slackwater Lake now for all the barges. Airport down there on Mud Island back up to the 1950s and 60s. When you build a bridge, you can't land airplanes underneath the bridge, right? Probably could in Memphis. We had a picture the other day with a guy landing an airplane on the bridge. Went to high school with me, Billy Rachel's. See how it used to come in? And seeing, we cut this half of Mud Island off right here, put it on top to get it above the 100-year floodplain. That's still the state line right there. So when you're looking on Mud Island across the water, you're still seeing Tennessee. Dan Conaway wrote about that about 2 months ago in his column. There's another comparison, back and forth. Dacus Lake's in there, people living on it. And here's the guy that designed that to make that happen, the rerouting. So you can get that 1,000-foot-long barge tow coming through that bridge right there, rather than having to turn like this and turn. That's a big deal. That's almost an M, isn't it? That's how we do M's in Memphis, huh? But anyway, that's the longest freestanding letter of the alphabet in the world at 1,760 feet long. So that's how you'd have come in. That's just really been tough. There's the airport. There's the yacht club. Snow. Dedicated August 12th, 1973. Governor Dale bumpers. Robert Smith, Tennessee Department of Transportation. Convention Center. These ramps to nowhere, this was supposed to come up, the pyramid wasn't there yet, up across, back up Mud Island and connect around in Fraser. FAP 300 plan, Hackett killed that in 85, and now there's development on Mud Island, obviously, rather than the interstate. But the ramps to nowhere are still there. That's what happened. And then we did all this in the 90s. I got a parking lot full of 800 cars caught on a Friday because TDOT didn't tell me they were going to close the entrance that day. That was fun. There's my airplane landing on a bridge finally, and a boat on a water. When the Peabody closed, they went across the bridge. Go west, young duck. Bridge of Lights, September 5th, 1986, 200 lights. Pat Tiger did that. There's the plaque that's still on Mud Island. It's going to open in May this year. I just heard that. Don't know the exact date yet. Parties over there, just beautiful parties. That's a view from the pyramid. Here's some flooding. You can kind of see how this is President's Island. This is in 2011. So the river got up 48 feet, got about 15 feet out of the channel, and just wanted to go straight like that. This is how the river's done this over the years, and it finally went back down in the channel and came back around, but it did a whole lot of damage right there to those lands. Got over into the floodplain there. You're looking from Arkansas. Here's the bridge right here. Looking from Arkansas towards Memphis. Again, that's intentional floodplain all in there. The Great River Road. There's the bridge to nowhere. Off-ramp to nowhere. There's the FAP 300 plan. 1987, onto Mud Island. A lot has happened since then. A.W. Willis Bridge, one of our great black legislators and good citizens in the middle of the century. Themed areas, Sherwood Forest, Chickasaw Gardens, President's Island. All these streets are kind of themed that way. French Fort. Here's Chickasaw Gardens. Almost done here. Major highways. Trolleys, Street Railway, Mid-America Mall. Building trolley lines is pretty tough. Having them pulled by mules are even tougher. We got there. Some great trolley scenes here. 18 trolleys in that picture right there. Right at Madison and Maine. This is when there was some flooding. They had to put it up above to get the trolley lines up on cross ties. Going from iron wheels to rubber wheels. There's the Mid-America Mall. Courthouse. There's the fountain at Civic Center Plaza. It used to be there until we had the trolley system. Clock tower. 4 different times on that clock tower too, by the way. Main Street Trolley came in 93. The Loop came in 1997. Some famous addresses. Anybody want to guess on any of these? 706 Union, Sun Studio. 920 Mansfield, that's Tom Lee. I believe it's 923 maybe. 4941 Summer would be the Holiday Inn. 406 Mulberry, National Civil Rights Museum. 406 Lucy's Aretha Franklin's house. Stax, Graceland, where Elvis lived in Lauderdale Courts, where Jefferson Davis lived, Cotton Exchange. No, 201. You know, it's the courts that are at 201, it's the jail that's at 225. So if you lose that question on a trivia contest with Cerrito or whatever, you come back and we'll get him right. 308 Poplar was Poplar Tunes. Name for people, some of the great names we have. That Barrett should be 1T. I'll have to talk to the secretary about that. Me. John Bull, Bramlett Lane, out there in the Tiger Lane. So, in closing, if you see a fork in the road, take it. Yogi Berra, not a better philosopher. So there we go. Thank y'all for coming today.